Having cancer forced me to realize that my best friend James is the love of my life. The only issue is that I'm a lesbian. My dearest friend in the world is a man named James. James and I grew up in the same town, a small, conservative Christian town. The first time I met him was on the playground at school. He saw me sitting alone under a tree, and came over to ask if I wanted to play with him and his friends. At first, I said no, but he noticed I was reading a book about space, and sat down next to me. He asked which planet I thought would be the coolest to visit. We ended up talking the rest of recess about what we thought the other planets might be like. When we went back to class, he introduced me to his friends as his new friend. From that point on, we couldn't be separated. Pretty much the entire town knew about us, and we had already been married off unofficially by age 8. We didn't understand at the time, of course, but I would go on family trips with his family, stay over at his place, and vice versa through most of elementary school. We would get in trouble for talking during class every day, though not really, because all of the teachers loved him. When we finally reached the awkward teenage years and dating became a thing, he asked me to the first school dance and I told him yes. A year later, we sort of started dating by default. I don't think we ever talked about it explicitly, but I just started calling him my boyfriend to other people and we went with that. Very little changed about our relationship. We still basically did all the same stuff we used to do before, except our parents got stricter about the sleepovers and there was more hand-holding and cuddling. I didn't know why at the time, but kissing and stuff was always really difficult for me. Naturally, he never once pushed any of this on me. The 2 times we tried, he was able to tell very quickly that I was uncomfortable, and he just shut the interaction down by messing up my hair and playfully saying, "Enough of that. How about we just watch a movie?" I just assumed one day I would get it. Well, I didn't. Sometime around 15 years old, I started to realize the problem. I wasn't attracted to men. Given the kind of environment I grew up in, this was not acceptable. I went over to his house trembling. He had done what he always did, made my favorite snacks and got the controllers and my favorite game ready to go. He opened the door and gave me a hug, and I went in. I was so scared. We sat down and he looked at me for a second before putting his hand on mine and asking what was wrong. So I tried to tell him, and I got halfway through the sentence struggling to actually say I'm gay before he just interrupted me and said, "You are gay." "Yes, I know. Is there anything else?" He followed it with that goofy smile I love so much. I just froze in place. I asked him if he was mad, and he just laughed and told me he loved me the way I was, and this was the way I was. I just started crying and jumped into his arms. We stayed best friends after that. We never actually had a breakup talk, but we did start to date other people. We hung out almost every day until we graduated, and he went away to a big-name college. The night before he left, he came and picked me up, and we drove around town and hit all our favorite spots. He drove me back home at 3 a.m. or something in the rain, and I took his hand during the drive home and fell asleep on his shoulder. He promised to stay in touch, but I didn't know if that would happen. Well, it did. Obviously, it wasn't like before, but he made sure to call me every week just to check up on me and see how things were going. I went to college close to home. During his junior year, my parents found out that I was gay. They did not react well, and I was basically kicked out of my home. To save me, I did what I always do and called James. He talked to me for about an hour and then got his mom to drive up to get me so I could stay in his old room. Then he flew home the next day, pretty much just to cheer me up and make sure I was all right. Vintage driving around in circles, singing like idiots, and 2 a.m. junk food runs did the trick. I later found out from my mom that he had also gone and confronted my parents, and stood up for me. He told them they should be ashamed of themselves and if they were willing to lose their daughter over this, they were unfit parents, and not the second family he thought he once had. My parents worshipped him, so this was effective. My mom still tells that story to this day. Years went by, and he got married, and I got a long-term girlfriend. We stayed close the entire time. We saw each other a lot less, but it was still great. Every time he visited, we had frequent texts and calls. And then tragedy struck. His wife divorced him. I never liked her, but he did. I think she used him for a green card, and he was too sweet to notice, but that's neither here nor there. He came back home, so I saw him a lot more. Obviously, he was crushed, but we got through it together. Then, at age 27, I had my own horrible news. I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a decent chance of survival, but I had to start treatment right away. This experience has changed me and my outlook on life more than anything else that's ever happened. At first, everyone was there for me. I was getting daily visitors. Friends, family, everyone. But as the weeks turned into months, it all stopped. Most people, even my friends, started coming once a week, then once a month. Then many not at all. When things were looking bad, around the 8-month mark, my girlfriend broke up with me, claiming she loved me, but that she couldn't handle watching this. Almost 2 years and now and there's only 5 people who are still here. My mom, my dad, my sister, my best friend Amanda, and James. I can barely talk about it without crying, but James is here every day for hours. He may have missed 20 days, and almost 2 years due to work-related travel, but even then he still calls me. He comes in and asks how I'm doing and listens. He brings my favorite snacks and treats. He brings in board games to keep me occupied, and even bought me a handheld device so we could play video games together. He sings to me, and shows me pictures of places he's been, and the places he'd like to go with me once I'm better. He sits there and holds my hand in silence, so I won't be alone, until the doctors tell him it's time to go. Then he does it again the next day. I've never seen him cry or show any sadness. If I even casually say something like if I get better, he'll immediately interject, if? You mean when you get better? He just won't give up on me. The only other person who is there like this is Mom. My mom is the #1 all-time James fangirl. 3 months ago, she made probably her first comment of me marrying him in around 7 years. Which sort of set me off on the whole months-long train of thought that led to this post. Then about a month ago, Mom was a little more direct after James left. One evening, she told me, "Baby, in all my years on this earth, I've never seen anyone love anybody like that boy loves you. I know you don't like it when I talk about this, but trust me, if you let him go again, you're going to regret it forever." I don't know what has changed, but this time when she said it, I just knew she was right. Lately, I even find myself fixating on his lips, and daydreaming about kissing him. I'm not that intimate of a person, but I think overall, out of the people I've known in my life, I would be happier with him than with anyone else. The biggest problem is my cancer. Honestly, I'm not even on the fence about this anymore. If I survive, I know I want to be with him. I am getting better by the day, and the doctors are hopeful. But I am not sure if I could even tell him. Don't get me wrong, I want to tell him so bad. I want him to know how much I love him. Lovers have come and gone for both of us, but every time I close my eyes and think about times I felt truly loved, understood, and accepted, it's always his smiling face I see. It's his arms I feel wrapping around me like a warm blanket. They're just my size. I love hearing his voice, telling me everything's going to be alright. I want him to know that I want him with me by my side forever. There's nowhere I'd rather be than by his side right now, wherever he is. I just hope I survive to see that future.